let's revisit a prior conversation. If HBCUs were to be put into EA Sports College Football 25, what schools would make up an HBCU DLC pack? Oh, yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your purchase. Terms do apply. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at Jamarion Stubbs, the Alabama State sprinter who had himself a day and stole the show at NCAA Outdoor Championships. Prior to that, Chris Paul is continuing his annual HBCU showcases, but he's going to narrow it down into one and have a compact event with D2 and D1 schools combined. We kick this off with a very familiar conversation. I kind of set this off the cuff, which was, what if we put together an HBCU DLC pack? Who would you like to see? Who do you think is most deserving, right? And I didn't go with my alma mater, but I did invite Mason Smith to come on, and he went with his of Alabama State. Let's go ahead and create ourselves an HBCU DLC pack for EA Sports College Football. Mason Smith's with me. No, he's not with Sports Illustrated anymore, but he's still an Alabama State alum. So I think this qualifies you to be a repeat offender on Locked On HBCU. So with that being said, we're looking at a potential HBCU DLC pack. And let me kick it off with this real quick. A couple of questions to understand your frame of reference. So are you a gamer? Because I said it last time, I'm not a huge gamer. This isn't something I do. Or at least were you a gamer when they used to make college football games?
I was a gamer, to be honest with you. I was very big into also the traditional sports games, Madden, 2K. I did play college football, college basketball when it was out. Those are really cool to me. I also delved into some other stuff that were non-sports related, like Assassin's Creed. But to answer your question, definitely a gamer. Okay,
so somebody said in the comments, and I don't know how true this is because this is not how I remember it. FCS teams were never in the game, like at any point. I swear I remember some FCS teams, where it was 1AA at the time. I feel like I remember some FCS teams in college football video games.
You would be hard-pressed to really prove that because it gets really difficult knowing that people create teams almost immediately when the game starts. Like, let's remember, there's always somebody's school that feels left out, whether it's an FCS or a 1AA school or Division II school or Division III school. Everybody wants to represent their alma mater. So I do believe there's maybe some kind of representation for that, but I don't really remember that either. I think most people just have to create their teams.
Hey, look, I was never a big gamer, so I will take your word for it. But look, the point of today's show is to have an HBCU DLC pack, right? Because obviously we know that FCS teams are not going to be a part of EA Sports College Football 25. So we're trying to figure out what HBCUs, if they did add them in as their own separate pack, would be included. I'm looking at, let's see, on my list, I think I have about 7 teams. 7 teams I think I have. I'm not going to list them off right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 8 teams. I have 8 teams. If there was a DLC pack, how many HBCUs you think we're seeing?
I'd say about 5 to 7. I thought about this question a lot. Since you brought it up to me off the air, I think that there are several main factors you want to account for when you're answering a question like this, including, atmosphere of a stadium, success of the football team, of course. one thing that's also interesting to me, a team per state per se. Obviously, you being a Texas Southern grad, me being an Alabama State grad, we want to have a chance to at least represent, not our school, at least a neighboring school. Obviously, it will be a cold day in Hades if Darian Gray represents Prairie View A&M on NCAA College Football 25.
You better say that then. You better say that. Hey, look, I pick some. I already know who I pick if it wasn't TSU, but I definitely ain't picking PV.
So, but understanding like, hey, at least somebody from our respective state is representing us in the game. That counts for something. That's something I want to keep in mind as I was thinking about my list and some of the schools I want to have on the game. But I say about 5 to 7. Some in the SWAC, some in the MEAC, but I do think we're going to be about 5 to 7 teams. In this HBCU DLC pack.
All right. So with your 5, we'll work with your 5 to 7. Right. We'll use that as the framework. Mm-hmm. Let me hear your list, and then I'll give you my list. I have 8 teams, so then maybe we can talk about who to take off. But let me hear your 5 to 7, or just how many you got on your list.
Well, I definitely have about 5 schools for sure. And the number one school, I got to be honest with you, Darren, it's got to be Jackson State. I know a lot of people may be upset because like, oh man, Jackson State's game atmosphere is one of the most unique you can ever experience. I experienced it both as a member of the marching band at Alabama State. I experienced it as an alumni of Alabama State. Seeing how raucous the crowd can get in a stadium that sits really high, you're almost looking into the heavens when you're sitting inside of the Met. It's a really good grand experience. The crowd really gets into it. The band, of course, probably one of the best game day atmospheres I can imagine at HBCUs. They're obviously number 1 for me. Number 2, gotta go with the Hornets of Alabama State. And honestly, that's a little bit of bias with that. But I will also argue, Darian, I know you laughing. I am,
because you said 5 to 7, and you got Alabama State on the list. No disrespect to my Hornets. I just want to know who's going to be left out. That's all I'm saying. So go ahead, do your thing. I ain't got TSU on my list, just so y'all know. Just so you know, I don't have TSU on my list.
You ain't got to pretend to us. But
I'm going to list it out. Come on.
The reason I picked Alabama State, I think they have the nicest stadium. I think they're one of the nicest stadiums, if not the nicest stadium in HBCU football. That stadium's about 12 years old now. It came out during the 2012-2013 school year. So, if you've seen the photos, you know how nice it is. They put a lot of money into that. I think a stadium like that would be really cool to play in when it comes to college football, NCAA College Football 25. So that's why I really have Alabama State more so than just it being my alma mater.
Okay.
Number 3 on my list, and remember, this is in no order. So everybody, don't get in the bunch. This is not in no order for me. Florida A&M, man, you can't ignore the Rattlers. You can't ignore the pageantry, especially the success they've had over the past couple of years. I understand that's going to be a new era with James Colsey, but understanding how great it would be to play in sunny side Florida, Tallahassee, down the road from Florida State for some people, I think this would be a great addition to that. Traveling up to the MEAC, I kind of like North Carolina Central.
Okay.
You got to give respect to teams that win at the end of the day. I understand, we want to show a lot of love to everybody else and having the opportunity to like, hey, what up, this school, that school. Winning matters. At least it does to me. And North Carolina Central, I think, is a really good school. They had a great program. Trey always doing a lot of great things. So North Carolina Central is definitely, the 4th school on my list. And then number 5, I think I'm going to lean towards Norfolk State. Norfolk State only because I want to try to spread it out just a little bit more. I'm trying to cover all the geographic areas when it comes to the game. Obviously, there's more you can account for when it comes to that. But I think Norfolk State being up there in the MEAC, former CIAA member for people that remember them, I think it's a good addition just to have the deep South up the Eastern Seaboard covered with those 5 schools: Jackson State, Alabama State, FAMU, North Carolina Central, Norfolk State.
Okay. I respect this. I respect the strategy. You got geographical implications, and you also have kind of just strategy involved as far as atmosphere. I went strictly branding, and I try to keep it as national as possible. So I have 5 locks. Grambling. I can't believe you didn't name Grambling. Grambling is a lock, right? Jackson State, FAMU, Howard, North Carolina A&T. I feel like those 5 schools should be there. And I understand that A&T gets a lot of knock for not being in an HBCU conference, but they're an HBCU, and they're one of the bigger brands as far as football goes for HBCU football. So I'm going to go with them. Then I'm looking at Southern. I'm looking at North Carolina Central, and I'm looking at Hampton. And Hampton is the one that I have a question mark on. That's my 8th team. If I had to take one off, it'd probably be them. But the brand of Hampton is ridiculous. The brand of Hampton is huge. So if we're speaking about branding and name recognition, because at the end of the day, this is a national game. So if we're talking about national games, we need national recognition. I'm going Grambling, Jackson State, FAMU, Howard, North Carolina A&T, Southern, North Carolina Central, because of the Celebration Bowl victory, and then Hampton.
You know what? I'm glad you said Hampton, because Hampton, I think, is an underrated program as well. The reason I didn't include Hampton, I've been in their stadium. It's not my most favorite stadium, but it does look great. It's called the Home by the Sea for the reason. Being on that campus, it's really beautiful. It's really nice. Not the biggest fan of the stadium itself. No, I don't. I feel like I'll be playing, that stadium doesn't, definitely get me fired up compared to a Grambling State. I think Grambling State's a great addition. Southern, obviously, is a great Louisiana, and of course, overall HBCU, especially football-wise. They had a great history in themselves. Pete Richardson and everybody else has come through that program. So Grambling and Southern, definitely add those to my list. Hampton,
See, I don't see. For me, it ain't even about. See, we got different criteria.
That's
we
true.
got different criteria. See, you got this the stadium, and that ain't even a factor for me. Like, that's not even something I play a part in. Now, you did scrunch your face up when I said North Carolina A&T, and I do want to know why you made a face when I said A&T.
I definitely did, and I did consider North Carolina A&T, because if we're going to talk about success, if I'm going to talk about success, then I cannot ignore North Carolina A&T. I did kind of hesitate a little bit when you think about, like you said, the non-branding factor when it comes to NCAP. But when you think about that, North Carolina A&T definitely has its argument, and people, when I put them in the game, I definitely be in support of that as well. So North Carolina A&T, if I had to have an 8th team, I think I'll probably put North Carolina A&T in there as well. I also may consider Tennessee State. Eddie George, how be cool to play for Coach Eddie George. But, I definitely think NCAT, you talking to you about this, man, I understand that North Carolina A&T has something to say. The South has something to say. I know North Carolina
has something to say. Come on, man.
North Carolina A&T got something to say. So I definitely agree with you on that. But one thing I want to add too, before we get too long into this, there is one wrinkle that's not a team that I would love to be in the game. In Madden, where you can sometimes choose the stadium that you play in or the setting that you play in, I would love the option of playing the Celebration Bowl, like having the pageantry, the banners, and playing in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Like, I think that would be pretty cool. Like, I know with the Rose Bowl, I can't forget the name of the stadium, but playing the Rose Bowl, playing in the Sugar Bowl, like, playing in these stadiums that have become synonymous with their bowl games. After the Celebration Bowl is one of the most recognized games in college football postseason. Some people may not want to recognize that. That's another story for another day. But I do believe that if you get the chance to play in the Celebration Bowl, with regardless of what team you choose, I think it'd be a pretty cool addition to the game.
Yeah, that'd be dope. And I think it should be there because that's where the SEC championship is played. So it is an option. I know they would have to modify it. I know we don't just want to play in that the Saints in me wants to disrespect the stadium so bad. But I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, it wants to disrespect the stadium so bad. But I know we want to play in Atlanta. So I don't know if it's the same thing as just saying, the SEC championship is the best we can do. But I appreciate you coming on. We done ran this about double-digit minutes, so we're gonna move on into our next segment. We're recording this early, but give the list one more time. Your list one more time, and I'll give my list as we close out.
Mason's list one more time for the fans: Jackson State, Alabama State, FAMU, North Carolina Central, and Norfolk State. Those are my top 5.
And then my list goes Grambling, Jackson State, FAMU, Howard, North Carolina A&T, Southern, North Carolina Central, and Hampton. So those are my 8 teams, even if I cheated to go one above the 5 to 7 range. I got Hampton as a question mark but you know what? That's my 8 teams, and I'm standing on that. So I appreciate you, for real. Now, as we push forward, I don't know what we're going to talk about because I'm recording this well before the actual show will be recorded. So we'll see whatever it's going to be whenever it's going to be it. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, and Gametime is the best place for all of your last-minute ticket deals. Procrastination really does kill, but at least Gametime is here to help you be able to survive it because you have zone deals, you have flash deals, and even if you're not looking at the deals specifically, Gametime itself is a deal in and of itself because you're looking at the best prices that you can find on the market, and you don't have to worry about people charging an arm and a leg because they know that you're desperate to get a ticket. You get to see where you want to sit, and Gametime guarantees that you'll be able to find the best prices. How confident are they in this? That they're willing to pay you 110% back on the difference if you're able to find a seat in the same section and the same row for a lower price. And then you get into the flash deals. Then you get into the zone deals. It doesn't matter if you're looking at athletics, if you're looking at concerts, comedy shows, theater plays, everything in between. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports today. It's the first of its kind, live, 24/7, all-day sports network on YouTube, so there's never a moment where you will not be entertained. Speaking of entertained, we have a big-time entertainment event for you, which is Chris Paul's HBCU Challenge. Now, he's back with another one. This is his fourth year of showcasing not just Division I HBCU basketball, but then also Division II HBCU basketball. This year is going to be in Connecticut. I think all the previous years have been in Phoenix. Even last year after he left, this one's in Connecticut. You know what? Hey, I guess if there's a reason to go to Connecticut, I now have it. I didn't have one before, as far as just stuff to do. I have a friend who stays out there, so I go see him. But other than that, I had no reason to be out there in Connecticut. Now it looks like I have one. Don't know if I want to see the winter of Connecticut, but hey, thanks, CP. Anyway, he's changed some things around this year, and I'm not just speaking about the location. It's not just, oh, you move from sunny Phoenix to cold weather Connecticut. That's irrelevant to everybody who's not me, probably. But it's also the format of the game. See, it used to be two different events. Division II used to have their own moment, and then I think maybe a couple of weeks later, you would come back and have the Division I. I think it was just separated. Whichever one was first, it was about 2 or so weeks in between each challenge. This time, there is no separation. You're just going to have you're going to have one event, and you're going to have two subdivisions. So on Thursday, December 19th, you're going to have the Division II schools who are playing. And when those teams are playing, you'll be looking at a mix-up of the CIAA champions Lincoln going against last year's CP3 Challenge champions Winston-Salem State, and then you also have Kentucky State facing Benedict College. So you're going to have two CIAA teams. CIAA just sounds disgusting. It sounds like I have a stutter. But you have two CIAA teams, and then you also have two SIAC teams who are going to take part. It's going to be a CIAA side, it's going to be a SIAC side, and it's just going to be those two facing off against each other, and then you'll have the eventual winner of each side, and they'll play in the championship game. The way that this is going to go for both D1 and D2 is you're going to have a single elimination tournament. You're going to have a first round matchup. Immediately after that, you'll have the championship game, and you have the third place game. So the winners in the first round go to the championship. The losers go to that consolation game, aka third place. In the Division I ranks, you have Norfolk State versus Grambling, and then you also have Delaware State versus Alabama State. So that's a battle of the Hornets and the ladder. But when you're looking at the main event, this is arguably the main attraction. And I love when tournaments like this do that. Let's not bank on Grambling knocking off Delaware State. Let's not bank on Norfolk State knocking off Alabama State. Let's not do any of that. Let's just go ahead and put the game that we know we want to see in the first round. This is not a tournament that has stakes at hand, right? There's nothing to play for other than essentially this tournament championship and bragging rights, because this tournament does nothing. It's not even an in-season tournament where they pay you some bread for it. This is just a bragging rights tournament. So if there's nothing at stake, no need to build up and have these monsters meet up in the championship. Put them first game. Guarantee that I'll be able to see it. The difference between scheduling for D1 and D2 is that you have conference going against each other, or excuse me, conferences going against each other. So you have the CIAA playing each other. That's interconference as far as the D2, but then on the D1 ranks is MEAC versus SWAC on both of the first games. So those was conferences playing against each other. I want to take something from Liv for Hoops, right? She's amazing. If you don't know, is LIVFOR Hoops, right? She does great work, and she brought up the involvement of women's basketball in these classics. We're all about expanding the brand. I've been pumping this for a minute. We need to get our HBCU women's basketball involved in trying to pump the brand, because we see where women's college basketball is at right now. Really the WNBA too, but like we're speaking about college women's basketball at the moment. We see where that's at. It's a point where people are interested, and I need that to extend to HBCUs. And she even brought up a great point. Look at Norfolk. Look at Grambling. And I don't know if this is the point that she's trying to make, but Norfolk State women's basketball, we know what they're about. Grambling women's basketball, they were really good last year. Why not just invite them? You could legitimately, and this is how I would like to see it. I love what CP3 does. I think he's done a great job over the last 4 years, but I really want to see women get involved in this classic, in this challenge. So let's try to pair this year's format with previous year's formats. So yes, D2, D1, let y'all have your own time. It can still be two separate 2-day tournaments. How about early December, you have a Division II Classic where you're looking at a 1-day tournament with the D2 men's, and then the next day, D2 women. Then on the D1 side, let that be another classic, another challenge, however you want to phrase it, because it was a challenge and a showcase. You could easily keep it separate again. Let's have the D1 men on the first day, D2 or D1 women on the second day. And you can literally bring all the same teams. Norfolk women's basketball, Grambling women's basketball, Alabama State women's basketball, and you also have Delaware State women's basketball. Bring them all in, and it can be played that way. Same first round matchups. Let's see what happens at the end. And if they, I think it's great. You can even have Norfolk State dominated this. They won the men's and the women's. That's just fun, and I think that it helps. It probably won't be CP3 who does it. He's been doing this for 4 years. I don't know if he changes. But what I will say is that you can have some women's basketball star. I don't know who it's going to be. Chris Paul graduated from Winston-Salem State in 2022. He's always had a great affinity and love for HBCUs that has been well documented, and I think it has a lot to do with where he grew up at. I don't know who that person is for women's basketball, but I would love if we were able to find it, because I do believe that women's basketball deserves that shine, to deserve that recognition. Personally, I would like to see there be the same format for men's and women's basketball. So essentially, to sum it up, I really would like to see women's basketball involved in these HBCU challenges, because they deserve to have that brand rising moment the same way that the men are getting at the moment. How about instead of D1, D2, go men, women on both sides and have them have two separate events? D1, men, women, D2, men, women. It can be a 4-day event. It could be two separate 2-day events. However you want to phrase it. I don't know. I'm not getting into logistics right now. If you want to plan at South Exclusives, hit me. But the way that I look at it is that's what needs to happen. And that's what should happen. Now, as we push forward, no more looking at what need and what should happen. Let's look at what did happen. Jamarion Stubbs, the Alabama State sprinter, absolutely stole the show, because he won his 100 and 200 meter heats. And that 100 was really dramatic. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. I was bummed to see Minnesota lose game 1, but game 2 is tonight. Can the Timberwolves get back, or will the Mavericks absolutely steal home court advantage in the same way that the Timberwolves did to the Nuggets? You're looking at Anthony Edwards. I don't know what his over is right now, but if you're looking at him, I'm betting on the over on his points. I think that he's going to come out and be a really strong scorer in game 2. What about Luka? What about Kyrie? I think that these things are all interesting, but you look at the other side and you have Jason Tatum, you have Tyrese Halliburton. I'm recording this well before game 2 happens on that side, on the Eastern Conference, but I think there's still a lot of intrigue. Jalen Brown points. Jalen Tatum points. You're looking at maybe Drew Holiday assist. That's an underrated one. Like there's things here that you could look at, and you have to go to FanDuel.com in order to do it. So go to FanDuel.com/locked on. That is FanDuel.com/locked on. If you're new to FanDuel, you get $150 back in bonus bets with a $5 winning bet. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Jamarion Stubbs has stolen the show at NCAA Outdoor Championships. We're only in the first round. The second round will be tonight. He won his heat in the first and second, or excuse me, the 100 and 200. So he's making it to the quarterfinals in both of those events, and those will both be Friday night. In case you haven't, maybe you listen to this on Saturday, you want to go see what he did in the quarterfinals, you have that. But Stubbs being a 100 and 200 runner, he smoked them both. But I want to start off with the 100 because the 100 was very dramatic. The 100 to me was an extremely exciting event, and it was one that I did not think he was going to win. To my naked eye, from the angle that they showed me, he was in last place through about the first half of the race. So let's just say that last 50 was when he really kicked it in. Excuse me. So in that last 50 meters, he went from last place to first place, and he hawked down the entire heat. Let's say he wasn't last. He was near the back for sure. In a 9-man race, I'm not giving him no better than 7th. And I'm talking about through the first half of the race, and he just absolutely ran him down with the long speed. See, that closing speed was different. That start, had me a little bit nervous. I'm looking like, I don't know, maybe I got the wrong lane, because I'm catching it afterwards. So I'm not seeing the whole introduction of this person's in this lane and this person's in that lane. So I'm just looking for Jamarion Stubbs. I already knew he won. I just wanted to watch the race. I'm like, it ain't that guy. So I'm like, where is he at? But it ended up being that guy in lane 9. He won lane 9 in both of these. But the end was so close. It was razor thin. I mean, the narrowest of margins. And when you look at the times, because I watched it 3-4 times, and I'm like, I don't know. But when you look at the times that they ran, it showed just how close it was. Not only did he win his heat, he won the best heat in all of the opening round. Let's not get it confused. Jamarion Stubbs had a great day in the opening round, but he also ran in the best heat, the most difficult, the most competitive, and the fastest heat of all of them. He was second as far as all runners go, but when you look at his heat, number 5, you had the second, third, and fourth fastest runners of all the 100-meter runners in NCAA championships. Heat 5 produced the second fastest runner, which was Stubbs. I already went there. So you had the second fastest, third fastest, and fourth fastest. And then the way that this works is the top 3 in each heat automatically move through. And then the 3 fastest times after you get beyond that, they also go into the quarterfinals. Heat 5 had the 3 of the 4 fastest. And then they also had the 2 fastest non-automatic qualifiers. These of the top 5, the 5th guy was at 13th of all runners. This was a phenomenal heat, and Jamarion Stubbs won that. Now, you look at the 200, it wasn't no. Oh, sorry. Let me go through that one also. Top 3 in the 100, 10:25, 10:26, 10:27. And when you really look at it, it was a 10:26.5 something, right? Like this was an extremely close race. I just want to make sure I hammer home how fast that race was and that he won it. Now, in the 200, Stubbs ran his personal best, which was a 20:02, and that wasn't even close. The next fastest person next to him in his heat ran at 20:54. So you're looking at somebody who in the 100 won by a 100th of a second. In the 200, he won by 0.5 of a second. It was a drastic difference. So, and he also was the fastest runner of all 200s here. So the second fastest 100 and the fastest 200. This guy was taking off, and that's about it for him. But then if you look at Kai Cole, he DQ'd in the 200, and then he also made it to the quarterfinals in the 100. Then also you have Thomas Smith, the 4th, who ran in the 110 hurdles, and he ran his personal best of a 13:62, and he won his heat, obviously. So you're looking at Thomas Smith, the 4th, and then you're also looking at Jamarion Stubbs, his two I don't know why I don't say fighters, bro. My mind is tripping right now. But you're looking at Thomas Smith IV, and you're looking at Jamarion Stubbs as two runners who ran their personal best in an event and won their heat. I can't wait till tonight. I cannot wait until Friday night. So in the meantime, in between time, I can't wait until Monday too. I'm not sure what we're going to look at on Monday. Maybe we'll look at the SWAC baseball tournament. God, Jackson State smoked TSU. I ain't like that too much, but it is what it is. So we got it back when we came up against PV. So hopefully we got either Jackson State or Bethune-Cookman in that next round to make it to the championship. So I'll be looking forward to that. But anyway, in the meantime, in between time, until next time we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.